Boris Johnson will try again today to get MPs to back his calls for a snap general election on December the 12th. But the Liberal Democrats and the SNP have their own ideas. They've launched an alternative bid for an earlier poll, but only if no-deal Brexit is taken off the table.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the EU will announce later whether to allow the UK a flexible Brexit extension until the 31st of January.
Joining us now, the Liberal Democrats' Brexit spokesperson, Tom Brake. Mr Brake, very good morning to you.
Morning.
The government has offered a general election on the 12th of December. Why do you want one 3 days earlier?
Well, we think this needs to be resolved, and I think the difference between our proposal and the government's is that under the government's proposal, Boris Johnson still wants to ram through his withdrawal agreement without time for Parliament to properly consider it.
Well, actually, he wants Parliament to be able to consider it until the 6th of November. How long do you think you need to read the bill and talk about it? I mean, considering that we voted as a country to leave back in June 2016, and now we are in the week that Brexit was supposed to be happening. I mean, how long do MPs need to consider Brexit?
Well, of course, what the Prime Minister is proposing is that we should have roughly a week and a bit to consider his bill in comparison, for instance, to the Wild Animals in Circuses bill that affected 19 animals in circuses in the United Kingdom that had 2.5 months.
I'm sorry, but the bill puts forward some changes and suggestions. Brexit as a whole has been considered for 3.5 years.
Well, but Boris Johnson's deal hasn't been considered for 3.5 years, and Boris Johnson's proposals around, for instance, in effect carving out Northern Ireland from the rest of the United Kingdom, that has only been considered since he brought forward his revised bill a few days ago. So it hasn't had focus for 3.5 years. I think what Boris Johnson's doing around the 12th of December is really trying to divert attention from the fact that he made this promise to do or die by the 31st of October, and clearly he's going to do neither.
Tom Brake, what would you do as a Liberal Democrat if you won a general election? What would the Lib Dems do?
Well, we've made it very clear what we would do. If a majority of MPs in the House of Commons were Liberal Democrats, we would take that as a mandate to revoke Article 50. If we had a large representation but didn't command a majority, then I hope we'll be able to work with other parties to try to secure a people's vote.
Yeah, so your intention is to stop Brexit, isn't it?
Yes,
I mean, you're Democrats. You're Democrats in your name. 17.4 million people voted for Brexit to leave, and your whole aim as a party is to stop Brexit.
Well, yes, and we haven't exactly been hiding that, and we'd run a general election campaign on that basis. And if a majority of people in the country voted Liberal Democrat and 326 or more Liberal Democrat members of Parliament were elected, I think we'd be entitled to take that as a mandate from the country that people's views had changed.
And on current polling, which shows the Tories on 40% in one poll over the last few days, what are your chances of winning a majority and stopping Brexit? And what are your chances, actually, of calling a general election and delivering a majority Tory government, which could then do, presumably, whatever Brexit it wanted?
Well, we are very keen to fight an election. We are very keen also to secure people's vote, but the latter seems to be difficult at present. We know that from the last general election, the Conservatives started 20% ahead and then failed to maintain that lead. It's a very open contest, and of course it's quite possible that this election would become one that was simply on the issue of Brexit, with people who want to remain supporting the parties that would clearly remain parties, and that's the Liberal Democrats, or people who are the Leave supporters supporting one or other of the parties that support Leave, the Conservative Party or the Brexit Party.
How much support do you think you actually got? Because already we're hearing this morning that some members of the SNP aren't fully supportive of this, calling this a proxy Brexit referendum. So you haven't even got the support of the SNP entirely, have you?
Well, that's down to them. I mean, obviously, Ian Blackford has supported it, and we'll have to see whether the Prime Minister does. Is the Prime Minister really as desperate for a general election as he says he is? Because we are providing him potentially with an opportunity to have a general election by the 9th of December. we have to see whether, in fact, he's willing to do that, because I don't think that he will get through his own proposal, because his own proposal actually requires Parliament to ram through at very short notice a bill that has not had consideration for 3.5 years, a bill that we've only been able to consider for a couple of weeks.
But as Adil says, Tom Brake, Angus MacNeil from the SNP, I mean, it's supposed to be a Lib Dem SNP proposal. Angus MacNeil, SNP MP, says it's madness, your own proposal with the SNP. It's a mandate for a hard Brexit. It doesn't exactly suggest a lot of wider support if you can't even get your partners behind the proposal to support you.
Well, Angus often adopts a slightly different stance from the rest of the SNP. He's entitled to do that, but clearly Ian Blackford, the leader of the SNP, is on board with this proposal. We have to wait and see whether the Prime Minister is.
And just finally, before we talk to Nick Gibb, the schools minister, so Minister of Government, about this proposal, is this proposal to have a general election just about the general election? Or would you put amendments onto it, which might then put people off supporting it? For instance, I know your party's keen, for instance, on votes for 16-year-olds. Would that be something that you might add in at some stage?
I think this is quite a straightforward proposal to get it through on the timetable that would need to happen. I think that there would be difficulties with lots of amendments being added to it and an ability to deliver this by the end of this week, which is what would be required to trigger a general election campaign, perhaps by the end of this week or indeed the beginning of next.
So you're ruling out an amendment on 16-year-olds voting?
Well, I think it would be problematic for the passage of that bill, because then there potentially could be lots of other amendments on other issues, and then we run into trouble. So I think my preference would be to simply move this bill forward and secure a general election so that we can then have an outcome in relation to Brexit. And certainly as a party, if there is a Liberal Democrat government next time round, we would certainly want to act to legislate for votes at 16 and 17.
OK. All right, Tom Brake from the Liberal Democrats, thanks very much.